It started off with us jokingly calling ChatGPT Chad. Now we've got Claudette. We have Bambi. We've got all these things.
And so what you get is people bringing two different scorecards to the table and marketing saying, I optimized for MQLs. I optimized for lead volume. This is what you asked me to do based on your calculations. And sales says, but we're left holding the bag on revenue. These two things are not aligned. So I think that's kind of why it's so dysfunctional.
Welcome to the Healthtech Marketing Show. I'm your host, Adam Chirinas. I'm the CEO of Health Launchpad, one of this podcast presenting sponsors. Thank you so much for listening. If this is your first time tuning in, please do subscribe using whatever podcast app you use. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We're all over the place. Just search for the Healthtech Marketing Show on YouTube or on whatever podcast application you use, and I'm sure you'll find us. A big thank you to our sponsors, the lovely people at Healthcare Now Radio. This is a 24/7 online radio station dedicated to all things healthcare. And they've also got a really amazing podcast syndication network, which we are loving being part of. It's expanded our reach enormously, and we're genuinely grateful to everything that they do. Now, today's episode, I want to start with a question I hear quite often from marketing leaders in our community. Is traditional demand generation actually dead? The MQL, the marketing qualified lead, was supposed to be the shared language between marketing and sales. But for a lot of organization, that language has broken down. Marketing used to celebrate lead volume, but sales was left holding the bag on revenue. And you know what? It just wasn't really working that well for many companies. What's been replacing it is something fundamentally different. A model where marketing is accountable for revenue along with sales, not just the pipeline that leads to revenue. And this is where quite often customer success is also part of the go-to-market team, not just a downstream afterthought. And this is where the buyer's journey is treated as one continuous experience rather than a series of departmental handoffs. And today I've got two guests joining me who are living this transformation, and they're both wonderful guests. So first of all is Paula Cobb. Paula is the VP of Marketing at AvaSure. This is a mid-size private equity-backed virtual care platform. Paula has over 30 years of healthcare marketing experience, including leadership at Philips, McKesson, and DXC. She runs a go-to-market model she describes as peanut butter and jelly. And I'll let her explain that. It's really kind of nifty. What I love about her perspective is how tightly she's integrated marketing with sales and customer success, and the fact that AI is part of the org chart. You'll hear why a bit later on. We then hear from the amazing Alex Esquivel. Alex leads marketing at Luma Health, and she's got a really unusual background. She's incredibly sharp on the business side, and that's because she came up through finance and operations before moving into marketing. And that background makes her particularly clear-eyed about why traditional demand gen was, and in her words, doomed from the start. And she'll describe what a genuinely revenue accountable marketing model looks like in practice. Both of them offer different perspectives and different views on ways of structuring a modern go-to-market operation. I strongly recommend you listen to both of these interviews. And also do stay right till the end, because at the end, I'm going to come back and I'm going to provide 5 key takeaways from these conversations. 2 great conversations coming up, one topic that is on everybody's mind right now. So let's get into it.
I am Paula Cobb. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for AvaSure. We are a mid-sized startup. private equity backed. I have over 30 years of healthcare marketing experience. Prior to being with AvaSure and a few other startups, I worked at Philips Healthcare, ran the Connected Care global marketing team there, also worked with McKesson, and DXC was covering insurance as well as healthcare. So been doing this for a really long time and love the art and science of marketing.
Wow, what a great pedigree. And so I'm so interested to talk to you about the evolution of, it used to be called demand gen. Well, it's still called demand generation, but now we talk about the GTM model, the go-to-market model. Tell us a little bit about your model at AvaSure.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, it's traditional, but it's not. Things move so much more iterative and faster these days with products. I mean, when you're, coming up with the idea of where you're going from an upstream viewpoint, that's happening so much faster now. We're releasing products, it's not planned out years in advance, it's months. And so that forces marketing to actually be very, very much involved in doing a lot of the business case development at the top of, in the ideation phase. And so you're creating a lot of what you would do in the traditional marketing phase later on, you're doing it up front. So I think that's been a big change for us in the world of delivering things in the cloud and with AI capabilities like we're building out. I think the other big change is you're constantly responding to a very noisy, very fast competitive environment. So you see things change. Like it used to be, you would set your product strategy and your price, and you kind of leave that alone for a while. And now we're iterating on, who is the true buyer and pricing all the way through the funnel. And it becomes much more flexible. So it requires us to really stay on our toes and to understand who that buyer is, what's happening, the influences that are happening within the healthcare systems to just make it a little bit messy, but you still have to do the same things. You still need to know who the persona is, what problem you're solving, and how you actually drive the right engagement with the right message at the right time in order to drive success in marketing.
So a change from a sort of traditional sequential model. You design the product, you get customer feedback on the product, then you develop your marketing strategy, then you launch it, and then you market it and you create demand. What you're describing is more like kind of like hockey. It's a more real time, right? Everything's sort of happening at once and it's dynamic. So that's really interesting. So how do you describe what a typical month or a quarter looks like in the life of your marketing team? And by the way, how is your GTM team organized? Who's in charge of it? What's part of it? How do you operate?
Yeah. So overall, our go to market team, we're organized with three basic components. We have our commercial arm, which includes sales and sales operations. Then there's the marketing arm, which is my team, and we have all of demand gen, we have product marketing, and we have customer marketing because we do have a very large customer base. And they've been with us for some time. So we're having to make sure that we market to them and bring them along to understand all these new capabilities. You don't buy a product anymore and you leave them alone and you use it and, occasionally do upgrades. We're like constantly iterating, adding new capabilities and giving them capabilities that expand out beyond their current use cases. So that marketing arm and the customer piece is a really, really important element. And then, of course, our customer success team is critical in our go-to-market strategy overall. So you take those three elements along with, the overall development and product team, which is very, very marketing centric as well. It becomes a lot of people involved and a lot of people that need to understand messaging that are our channels that take out and deliver the content and the engagement cycles.
And do the three of you report to the CEO? Do you report to somebody else, a chief commercial officer?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a mixture. I report to the CEO. Our sales channel reports into our go-to-market operations leader, as well as our customer success. And I think that strategy is also because I'm responsible for the corporate brand, all of corporate communications and the internal aspects of, helping our employees. So that's where I actually kind of have a different reporting structure than the others do. But we function as a single unit. We like to call ourselves peanut butter and jelly because it's not good without one of the components and just happens to match our first initials of our names.
Now, that is becoming a leading model for how many modern marketing teams operate. For folks listening to this, can it contrast where that either came from or other marketing operations that sort of structures that you've worked in, what the differences are?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you in different entities, you would have a corporate marketing structure that was really worried about comms and brand. And it's kind of setting that, 100,000 foot view of, here's our tagline and what our vision and our purpose is. And in our structure now, we have one entity that does marketing. And we do worry about that, but we need to make sure that that mission, vision, and brand actually represents the products and the solutions that we go to market. We're one and the same. There's, even though we have multiple products within our product suite and we serve a broad range of customers, it's really important that every employee within the organization is aligned on the value of that product and that being the heart and soul of what we're selling and how we go to market.
And so who actually develops the product? Is there a product management team that's more sort of technical and process oriented?
Yes, that's correct. In our case, our product managers, we both have clinical as well as technical managers, but they're building business cases in conjunction with marketing. We design kind of where the strategy, where we want to go. We provide the data and the feedback from our customers, the insights, what we're hearing from competitors, the opportunity to bring partnerships in. And we work together to develop that strategy and launching and taking that to market.
So it sounds like you spend a lot of your time and you and your team's time working on alignment and partnership with the product management development side of things, as well as sales as well. Is that fair? Is that sort of
100% sales and customer services and success. So it really is all of us together. And marketing is kind of the common piece that's, going through and working with each of these teams to bring us together to stay in sync and to make sure that we do have that common voice in the market.
So you're facilitating the collaboration, the connection across all of the entities there.
Yeah, 100%.
That's very, very interesting. I want to dive into, the demand generation side of things, because that's where there's been a lot of change there. Now, the MQL, Marketing Qualified Lead, was supposed to be the shared language between marketing and sales. Where does that sit within your organization? Do you use MQLs? Is that evolving?
Yeah, I mean, we still use the phrase MQL. I think what's changed for me just across the years and in particular in our organization, it used to be a volume game. And I celebrated the number of qualified leads that we would turn over. And then you just kind of watched it and it was like, hey, let's see where this goes. And, you got to celebrate maybe 6-9 months down the road with the sales cycle links that we have in healthcare. But that's really not the case anymore. Like we nurture those leads, any sort of touch point. Marketing spends a significant amount of time actually nurturing the leads, further qualifying them, doing more discovery. So we're handing them off what I feel like is a little bit later in the sales cycle, a little bit later in the top of funnel, before the sales team or inside sales team starts to engage with the customer. So it's still really important. We still track those and measure them, but I feel like marketing stays within the pipeline a lot longer because we work together on what are the right next steps in the engagement cycle for this particular product. What level of content, like when's the right time to do the demo? It used to be you throw an MQL over and the very first thing they did was a demo. And now we're really going and doing much more deeper discovery, alignment with stakeholders well up front, and then getting through making sure that we understand they truly have a need and we can truly solve the problem that they want. And then towards the end, we start demonstrating the products and the capabilities and getting them excited about what they're about to implement and utilize.
So a big shift from quantity to quality. How do you know when something is qualified and a high enough quality to hand off to sales?
Yeah, when we have the customer talking in great detail about the problem they need to solve, and we know based on our experience that we can actually solve that, then that becomes a truly qualified lead. If we often hear customers saying, I'm interested in blah, 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 or I'm interested in virtual care in our sense. And what does that mean to you? And what's the definition of that? And where are you and within your organization in making this decision? Is IT going to be involved? We spend a lot of time in the early cycle of nurturing those leads, educating them what it's going to take to actually get this project through their organization.
And is it the SDRs who have the conversation? Is it, and do the
Yeah.
SDRs report to you or do they report to sales?
SDRs report into marketing, and I think that's the secret sauce.
Yeah.
They're all talented individuals that ultimately will likely go into sales, but they're the ones that are on the hot seat developing that and taking the customers through the discovery phase at the beginning. So, and I think being in marketing is the secret sauce.
So sales and marketing alignment is always a bone of contention. And it's often the reason why GTM fails. I'm curious, how is it structured in your organization? How do you achieve good sales and marketing alignment?
We have incredible go-to-market alignment and sales and marketing alignment. I think it's because we share common goals. And it used to be, marketing celebrated leads. We celebrated creating awareness and media mentions. And, my team gets compensated and bonuses based on us actually closing deals. So marketing has skin in the game all the way to the end. It is important that we understand that our engine and the marketing engine is here to create opportunity and growth. And we're also here for retention and renewals. We are not just about creating a top of funnel anymore. We're throughout the funnel and actually throughout the customer life cycle. So, my partner, sales leader, is fantastic. We know how we solve common problems together. We approach training of our teams together. We are aligned on our strategy. We report with it going to the board on what it means to go through an entire cycle from introduction of a product to creating leads to driving that through the sales pipeline to closing the business and continuing to service that customer.
In the way that you measure and report this, are there any different ways that you show the contribution marketing's making versus other aspects of the business? Or is it just looked at as one single contribution, KPI?
Yeah, no, I use different metrics. I would say now probably the marketing, KPIs and results that we're tracking is complicated as anything it's ever been. We're tracking AI visibility now, as we advance and leverage GEO more. We're not just looking at leads and cost of leads, but we're looking at time in the sales cycle, the velocity that it takes to go from one phase to the next. Are we utilizing the right tools? Do we have the right stakeholders? Do we understand how those buyers and leaders may be changing and what the pressures may be coming to them from other forces and not just in the area that we serve? So the dashboards are quite complicated. I'll tell you, I have like 3 spreadsheets of them that I'm looking at with my team every month. We take a portion of that up to the leadership team for the things in the areas where we feel like we may be seeing trends and areas for us as an entire organization to improve. And then there's a portion of that then we also share with our board to make sure that they understand exactly what's happening in the industry and what's happening in buying cycles and why things are either slowing down or speeding up and why we need to make some of the strategic shifts that we do.
So you referenced generative AI. I'm curious about changes that you've seen in buyer behavior over the last few years. Yeah, generative AI is one of it, but I'm just sort of curious, have you seen differences in the way that buying the organizations that you're selling to that have buying committees of 8 to 20 people involved with it? How is that
Yeah.
changing and how have you adapted to that?
Well, I think it's definitely changing. We're finding the buyers to come in a lot more educated, or at least they think they're educated on the business problem. They're all doing their own searches and doing, competitive analysis and comparisons well up front, not just during RFP cycles and things that they would use in the past. I think for us, what we've had to change in marketing is the type of content that we deliver. I think, more of the how to, more of the educational pieces, but also underlying that with the true like clinical studies and IT studies on ROI that actually shows value and examples and not just feature function comparatives, which makes a difference in what the type
Mm.
of data they're looking at.
The way that the organizations, the buyers that you're selling to, how is the way that they discover you changing?
Oh, well, in healthcare, first and foremost, I don't think this has changed a lot, but it certainly is now. Probably 80% of decisions are made by phoning a friend. They are making their 1 to 2 vendors are going to bring into the buying cycle or to make decisions, and they have already called everybody they know and talk to them, whether they're doing it through their association memberships or just their long term friendships that exist in healthcare. So it's important for us to make our customers more of our feet on the street than even our own voice. We've
Ah.
got to continue to show them the ROI because we know they're probably going to be the first voice that ever mentions our name to someone who's trying to make a decision.
Drill down on how you foster that and activate it.
So that's one of the reasons why customer success is truly a part of go to market. It's nurturing that relationship. We do incredible QBRs and engagement with our accounts along the way. We make sure that they know what ROI they're receiving. We provide them the tools. We work with them on the studies. We actually help them do their job and report up to their leadership. So that way we're aligned on those values and truly the advancements that the technology that they're utilizing is bringing to their organization. So you create really informed leaders in the industry and you let them go out and be the voice.
Mm.
And, we try whenever there's industry opportunities or show. I really don't get excited when it's someone from my team actually doing interviews. It's really exciting when my customers are on stage and they're talking with their peers and they're talking about what they've accomplished. And so that's what we try to do is
Mm.
let them be the voice because we know that they trust each other. And in healthcare, it's a tight knit relationship society and they'd rather hear from each other than to hear from any vendor.
So getting them speaking opportunities at HIMSS and Vive and the other
It,
shows. Yeah.
yes,
Are there
absolutely.
other things that you've tried, like podcasts or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of podcasts that we participate in. We also encourage our customers when there's opportunities to go and participate. For example, this week Health Spotlight,
Yeah.
various
Right.
customers 2 to 3
Mm.
times a week. So we certainly are encouraging our customers and connecting them with the right resources so they can be involved.
I'm curious, you mentioned This Week Health. That's part of Project 229. I'm never quite clear. They've got lots of, it's the Bill, I was thinking it's like, that's Bill Russell's thing. So that's the media arm of it with Drexter Ford and I can't remember the name of the other person actually, I think who runs it.
Yeah, and Sarah Richardson. So it's an
That's it.
interesting thing. It's a very localized, community-based engagement place. So they bring together people within a region and they come together frequently, whether they're doing dinners or having networking time or whatever it is, city tours. They show each other their facilities and share their business plans and really talk about the real problems that are happening within that. So it's neat because you start to see the peer-to-peer network get very regionalized within their format, which allows you to also understand what's happening in the region and those states that may have a different impact than what you'd see on a national level.
It's very interesting watching how face-to-face marketing, event marketing, experiential marketing, whatever, however you want to define it, is changing. I think we had a great discussion recently in the Healthtech Marketing Network. And the kind of takeaway is one is it's more important than ever. It's almost like a reaction against AI. which is to be as
Mhm.
personal as possible. And the other thing was, everybody is now moving towards more of a focus on smaller, more intimate events, as well as going as large as they can at HIMSS and Vive. And in some cases, actually, some players, some vendors are choosing not to have a big booth presence, but to focus on getting a speaker. So getting a customer like yourself, getting a customer out there and then building the program at the event there. So it's quite interesting how that's evolving. And Project 229 is it's a big disruptor in all this. I think it's fascinating what's going on.
It is a fascinating time to be in healthcare marketing. I feel like, you still have a lot of the traditional things that we have to do, having a booth, being able to allow people to come see what the solutions look like. You can't, when you've got 7 or 8 different solutions that are integrated on a platform. And like for us, we have a 72 partner ecosystem. So we've got lots of things that are running on our platform. You've got to be able to show that. That's very hard to do virtually. And it also is often conceptually, really hard for a clinical team to say, wait, all these things in this hospital room can run on one platform. So it's important for us to do traditional and have the booth and the demo to actually show that and bring it to light. But then on the other side is how are you helping them drive and prioritize their agenda? We're doing that, with the traditional more, small curated events that Chime and 229 and others are doing there.
Yeah, got it. It's interesting. One thing you haven't mentioned is the B word. I don't think you've actually said brand once in this interview, which is not a criticism at all. It's just it's interesting. How does the B word play in your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have the advantage that in our organization, we started and created a tool or a capability with telesitting, and that's what we're very well known for. No one else was doing it, and you're first to market. The hard part for our organization is we've grown so far beyond that, and we are a true virtual care platform. So when I think about brand, it really is about changing perception in the market.
Yeah.
That it's important because you have plenty of startups that are coming in and may do a piece of what we do and compete with us in smaller areas. So our brand has continued to focus on we've been doing this for a long time. We understand what's happening in your hospital. We've been there and we're growing with you. We're continuing to solve the adjacent problems as you've solved the core problem. It's having one-to-one sitting for patients. Now you can take that to a complete AI generated smart room that's giving you all the data you need to more successfully get those patients in and out of the hospital as quickly as possible.
So for you, brand is category creation.
Correct. 100%.
Interesting. Now, you referenced generative AI early on. I'm curious, in your GTM model, where does AI play?
It's playing everywhere. I think my team now, we actually refer to a lot of the tools that we utilize by their first name. They're members of the team. It started off with us jokingly calling ChatGPT Chad. Now we've got Claudette. We have Bambi. We've got all these things, and they're members
Who's
of the
Bambi?
team. And
Which one's Bambi?
Yeah, that's a tool that we've created that's specifically helping us with RFPs and responses. So, yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
So she's a hunter out there trying to make sure we're getting all the data right and running ahead of where the competition is. So, yeah, so it's part of everything that we do. Absolutely. And as a tool externally, we realize that that's exactly what our customers are doing as well. They're learning, they're utilizing it. So it's all the way, the more that we are creating and improving our speed to create the right content and get it out into the market, the better they'll understand who we are.
So AI is almost on the org chart,
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Fascinating. That's really, really cool. And it's refreshing because so many people talk about, AI for content creation and for research, which is totally understandable. It's a wonderful use case for it. The RFP example you've given, can you unpick that a little bit? That's very interesting.
Yeah, 100%. So, we're an RFP heavy industry in healthcare. I mean, we've probably gotten more this year than we had at the midpoint of last year. So they're rolling in fast. We've created some tools that are allowing us to understand what are the common questions, how do we better respond to those. We look at not only our data, we look at the competitive data. How would our AI tools and how would they potentially respond to this? And then how do we make sure that we're differentiating the difference of what we know we do compared to what we know they do? We also, use a lot of the customer stories. We've had customers that have piloted competitors and tried it in different areas, and they've come back to us because we do have the proven processes and implementation and training. And we've got a really, really mature services and implementation and support organization. So we leverage the training material there to make sure that we're highlighting those differences. So it's become a lot more complicated than a really bright person just answering questions and scouring free data, that now we're generating our content for the RFPs, and then you're using multiple people from product to sales to marketing to look at that and say, how does this fit with the customer that we know that's asking for this information?
Great example, great use case. So a lot of the folks who are listening to this are somewhere on the journey towards the traditional volume-based approach to more of the quality approach that you're taking. And also, I think what I think is really interesting about your model is that you're one of the few companies that operates a team of one, which is sales, marketing, product, and customer success, working in a very tightly coupled way rather than operating in silos. What would you advise if somebody in the community came to you and said, hey, Paula, how do we get started with this? We really need to get moving. What would you advise them?
I think the first thing I would advise anyone going into this is marketing should be the strategic leader. Your job is to bring the organization together, align on the goals, be that voice in the room that says, all right, we're aligned on strategy. Let's all run in the same direction. Look at the way we're reporting and functioning as an organization and operationalize ourselves. So you do have that great seamless team. And, I can trust that in football terms that I can be the quarterback and my receivers, I'm throwing to the spot, not to the runner, that somebody's in front of me and they're blocking and they're tackling, so we have to function in that environment. And it is absolutely 100% marketing's job to sit in that role and be that person.
Marvelous. That's a great piece of advice. So last question for you. This is a little dark, but I want to ask it. So if you were to write an obituary for traditional demand generation, what would that be?
Oh, goodness. I would probably say farewell to all of the things that used to be mailed, to collecting business cards, and to showing up and hoping that someone will stop by to see you. You should be instead aggressively going out, using every second and treating it like it is an experience that somebody wants to be involved. And you are constantly talking, whether it's your mouth moving or the screens and the content that you put out there.
That was impressive. That was poetic. You should do it for a living. That's marvelous. Paula, that was great. I really appreciate you sharing your feedback and your perspective so candidly. Thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
So that's Paula Cobb. And I think she gave us a really vivid picture of what a modern GTM model looks like when it's actually working. So marketing embedded in product decisions, SDRs sitting in the marketing team, customer success as a core part of go-to-market, and AI on the org chart. It's integrated in a way which a lot of organizations are still trying to figure out. My next guest is tackling the same question from a different angle and with a very different background. Alex Esquivel leads marketing at Luma Health, a patient access platform. And what makes Alex unusual is her background, which she'll describe in detail. So with that, let's get on and meet Alex.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to talk to you about this. And I agree, it's been a long time coming. So I'm Alex Esquivel. I lead marketing at Luma Health. I have been in healthcare my entire career, but I actually started on the finance and operations side of the business and have worked my way into marketing. I found that that part of the business was a little drier than I would have liked, a little too black and white. So I love that marketing can still be data-driven. You're still very involved in the finance and operations part of the business, but you get to bring that creative element that you maybe don't necessarily get to see in those other.
Well, you're a rare breed.
That is very
I
true.
don't think I've come across anybody who's come from the finance side and moved into, and that's a huge strength. I'm really fascinated to get your perspective. So let's dive into it. So this episode is about how the GTM model, the go-to-market model, has changed. But let's sort of start with a little bit of kind of history, which is the MQL, the marketing qualified lead, was supposed to be the shared language between marketing and sales. It's sort of become dysfunctional. I mean, I think that there are still a lot of companies that are using it. The definitions are changing. What's your perspective on the evolution and what's it being replaced with?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it was doomed from the start. I think demand and lead gen got synonymized really quickly, and we have the MQL. We tried to reverse engineer from a revenue number that we needed to hit and say, okay, if we need this much revenue, we need 4 to 5x pipeline. Marketing, you own this piece. You know, if you have an outbound team, you own this piece. Based on historical conversion rates, marketing, you go get this many leads, but sales, you're accountable for revenue. And so what you get is you get people bringing 2 different scorecards to the table, and marketing saying, I optimized for MQLs. I optimized for lead volume. This is what you asked me to do based on your calculations. And sales says, but we're left holding the bag on revenue. These two things are not aligned. So I think that's kind of why it's so dysfunctional. In terms of what's replacing it, I'm a strong believer that marketing needs to be accountable for revenue and not necessarily closed won, because there's a lot of that sales process that we can partner on but not control, but stage 3 at the very least. So not just we booked a meeting, but that meeting happened, sales had that conversation, and they said against their criteria, yes, this is a viable opportunity at the very least.
Break that down for me a bit. How do you go about measuring that?
Yeah, I think you set the criteria in partnership with your revenue operations team, in partnership with your sales team, to be able to say, this is what constitutes a qualified opportunity. And then you measure against that. I think it's really easy to get caught up in your attribution model too when it comes to that. But I think you kind of just have to pick one and go with it. And I've not met a marketer that's really solved attribution per se.
It's incredibly hard. And I think when an opportunity gets to a sales stage, it's pretty binary, right? You know, there's a qualification criteria, whatever you happen to use. And then if something moves ahead or it doesn't move ahead, you know it's binary. From a marketing perspective, you're handing over an opportunity. By the way, what do you name them in your organization? At the point where it's handed over, what's it called? An opportunity, a lead?
An opportunity. So we actually don't measure MQLs at all. We start at what we call S1, just a stage 1 opportunity. So we generate a certain number of stage 1s, and we're not too wrapped up in the revenue piece of it at that point. It's just the number of S1s. And then in Salesforce, we track that through, okay, stage 2, there's a little bit of discovery going on. Like, what are they looking for? Can we meet their needs? But then stage 3 is what we call stage 3 qualified, is at the point that sales has said, you know, against their criteria, they use MedPick. So like against their criteria that like this is viable and could go somewhere.
And so what's the criteria for something to be a stage 1?
That they've agreed to a meeting. And we have a couple of sub-stages within that too. So one, they've agreed to the meeting and that it's open, but we don't actually start like measuring it until the intro is complete. So the meeting has happened.
I see. That's very disciplined. And do you own the SDRs? Do you?
No.
And do you have it? So you don't own the SDRs now?
No, we're on a revenue team. So I sit with an SDR leader, a sales leader, and myself, all under SVP of revenue, but we're all very aligned.
Gotcha. Excellent. So is the typical kind of process that you start to, actually, you know what? Rather than me assuming what's the typical process, take me through the process. What does it take to get an account to become an opportunity?
A lot. And I think maybe this is also part of why traditional demand gen or lead gen is dead, because I think there are like 3 stages that you have to do really well to get to that point. I think you have to create demand, and some people would say like, well, that's brand's job. Well, not really. The way I see it, that also sits in demand. So you have to create the demand itself. You have to capture the demand in some way, and then you have to actually convert it, is the point that we're talking about. And I think the number one thing that you can do to enable that process is to know your audience really well. So make sure you have that product market fit. Make sure you're not only talking to customers, but also prospects on a regular basis. What do you care about? Who are you accountable to? Where do you spend your time learning about things? Who do you trust to go to for information? Also, we use Gong. So Gong calls are a great source of that information too. We hear a lot or get a lot of inspiration from like, hey, so-and-so salesperson was on a call and this account, like they just lit up when they heard about, this feature or this piece or this benefit. We might want to test that with our market. So I think really knowing your audience and what they care about is a good place to start. And then you can kind of get into the channel mix of it all.
So do you take an account-based approach to this?
We do multiple different things. So I think the short answer is yes. I think all marketing at this point has to be.
Yeah. Let's step back, sort of paint a picture of your GTM model from a marketing perspective.
Sure. So we've kind of killed the traditional campaign model, which I think we'll get into more on the AI side of things. But we do short iterative topics, I would say, and we go really quickly from idea to execution and testing that on like maybe some of our most efficient channels and then expanding from there. But then we do have an account-based motion, which is really interesting. We started that. It was a long time coming. So we started testing pieces of that, but I think really we got the engine humming and Q3, Q4 of last year. And I think what that took was a really good SDR partnership. So we started with our like enterprise accounts, let's say, and because those buying committees are really complex, they're really big, but we have a lot of enterprise accounts and we had a lot of things to model after. So we kind of dug into like, why do we win in these accounts? And then tried to model that after. And then it becomes almost like, I would hesitate to say this, but like almost stalking your account. So who's involved in the buying process at this account? What do they care about? Who do they work with? Who are they accountable? Do we know anybody? Do we have any maybe relationships already? Are they going to be at any shows? We're a big fan. I was actually just reading your newsletter this morning about the new events model and the smaller group events. So like we do a lot of those as well. So like, are they going to be at any of these things? Can we invite them? Can we pair them with a current customer who maybe looks like them? For example, if we're going into an academic medical center, we have academic medical center customers. So can we get them to just talk to each other about what they're doing and maybe if there are any of their initiatives that they have in common?
So let me just kind of step back a second just to make sure I understand it correctly. So you're basically casting a wide net to a long list of accounts. And if you're going for enterprise,
no, I maybe skipped over that part. So I think step one was that we sat with the rep and the SDR and we said, give us your top, 10, and then let's get it down to 3 and start there.
So that's for the ABM motion.
Correct.
I see. And so,
correct.
So you separated that very much sort of one-to-one ABM. You're probably handling a small number every quarter and rotating them. So
exactly.
Changing that mix up. Got it.
Exactly. And then on the other side of the house, we have 5 primary go-to-market segments. So our content and our motions and that like iterative process that I mentioned, it's like pretty narrow by go-to-market segment. So it's maybe a one-to-few or one-to-many model, but depending on the segment. But yes, that's
and so and that's sort of in that case, are the segments in the tens or the hundreds or thousands?
The hundreds or the thousands, depending on which segment.
And are you looking for a signal there?
Yes, we do have software to help us with intent, and we do pull that into a scoring model. But the scoring model is not for MQL. The scoring model is for like, okay, we should, look at this. We should send this to the SDR team. We should invite them to more things. We should customize. They're at maybe a different stage than other companies, and the content should look different for them.
Right. So you're using demand and awareness tactics across a defined segment to figure out who's sort of like not putting a hand up, but showing signs of potentially being in market.
Precisely. And our scoring model, it's part fit because our ICP is so specific that it's part fit and then it's part engagement.
Part engagement. Got it. And so do you mind sort of revealing a bit about from what you're looking at from an engagement standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty high bar for engagement. So, like, they open an email is not necessarily scoring very high. That doesn't really help anybody. And lots of people open their emails. But a click through on an email or an ad engagement or things like that. Also, like I mentioned, we have some like website software that can help de-anonymize some of the traffic on our website. So those types of things can help alert us.
We've been trying a whole bunch of them. Which ones have you been?
We've tried Knock 2 is what
I
we're
don't know.
currently using.
Don't know that one. Oh,
yeah, and we've
I'll
been
check.
able to build it into our HubSpot model.
Yeah. I've tried Vector. I've tried our B2B. I've tried Get Squid and Virtual Visitor. I don't like any of them. I mean, to me, the problem with them is that, the promise is, oh my God, I'm going to be able to identify everybody. No, you're not. You're going to be identified.
No, what I do like about it though is you can by role. So the data they have is pretty good. So for us, like patient access is a big part of our target market. And so I can identify patient access leaders. And so we don't alert on everything. So a lot of it doesn't get scored. But anything that's like patient access leader, that gets scored fairly highly and comes through an SDR team will reach out in that case.
Got it. Okay. So in terms of reporting this, what do you report and to who and what frequency?
I mean, I'm in my dashboards daily for sure from my own my own perspective. And then we've got a pretty healthy cadence with the marketing team. So we have a daily stand-up that's pretty quick. But on Mondays, we go through metrics as a team. And then we have like a monthly readout process with our leadership team, with our executive team that we're kind of reading progress against goals. And then there are quarterly goals.
And what are the KPIs that the leadership team is interested in?
Primarily stage 3 revenue. So if I'm talking through my dashboard, we look at stage 3 revenue as like my primary gold star. And that's that qualified pipeline that sales has agreed, like, yes, this is a viable opportunity. Yeah. But then I like to break that down over different time horizons. So I'm looking in that like month, quarter, comparing it to previous. But then also I look at it by go-to-market segment. So do we have balance across our pipeline? Are we struggling in any particular area? Is one taking off? Are we doing something right in one area that we should maybe replicate in others? Should we stop doing things? I also, even before that, if we look higher up in the funnel, I like to look at ICP coverage. So we have a certain number of contacts in our system, ICP, like what percentage of those are we covering? And of what we're covering, how many of those are engaging with us? So I like coverage to stay pretty high, and engagement is one of those that like we monitor and kind of tweak and iterate on how we can improve.
When I poll across the Healthtech Marketing Network, the community, the biggest issue that consistently comes up is selling the value of marketing to the C-suite. How does your leadership team view marketing? And what do you get challenged on in terms of the contribution that marketing makes?
Yeah, building trust with the executive team is like one of the most important things that you could do to make sure that your team has the resources that they need to succeed. And honestly, whenever I've been joining a new organization, that's part of my interview process, is to make sure that there's already at least a little bit of the mentality there that like, hey, marketing is a key contributor and has a seat at the table here. Because I think that's really important, because sometimes there's not going to be a way to convincing. So I think having that conversation even up front is important. But then in terms of how like getting support, I think just showing that we're accountable to revenue. I think there's a hesitancy to be accountable to revenue because it's hard. I think it can be simple and straightforward, but it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. So I think taking that ownership and saying like, yes, we will own a revenue number and we will be accountable to that. And our goal is to create pipeline that sales can close. I think it's hard for a leadership team to say no to that, but then you have to go and prove it and do it, which we've been able to do to a reasonable degree. I think brand spend, like any marketer, brand spend probably gets questioned more than anybody else. So I like to call them leading indicators. These are leading indicators of pipeline. If we have good PR coverage and good brand engagement and website traffic looks healthy and time on site looks healthy, all of those things I would call leading indicators. And I think we've been able to get buy-in like that those things do eventually convert into pipeline. It's actually really interesting. So when I joined, speaking of joining an organization, my background is in demand. I didn't start as head of marketing. So I came up in marketing through demand. And in joining a new organization, one of the first things I like to do is like talk to everybody and say, okay, sales, like tell me all the details. What do you hate about working with marketing? What do you love about working with marketing? And I asked that across all different areas of the organization. And usually in past lives, what I've heard is, like the leads suck. It was some version of that. But when I joined Luma, it was actually really interesting, because I heard more than anything across the board, the consistent thing I heard is like, I go somewhere or I start talking and people are like, this sounds great. Why have I never heard of you before? So I was like, oh, we have a brand awareness issue. There's not necessarily like nobody's complaining about the content. Nobody's complaining about the crappy leads. I mean, everybody always wants more but leads, but that was the number one thing that I heard. And so we kind of focused on that for a little bit and have continued to focus there.
It's such an interesting point. Tell us about, how you've gone about, first of all, making the case for brand marketing, and then what type of activities did you do?
Yeah, so we definitely had to start with demand. So that was the first thing that I did focus on, was like, okay, and part of I don't want to say the issue, but part of what I did originally was like, look at the reporting and look at what's happening. And I think part of what was being misinterpreted was that marketing was actually doing fairly well, but the infrastructure wasn't there to show it. So that's where I initially started, is working very closely with RevOps and our revenue leaders to say, like, this is how I suggest we track things. This is how I suggest we measure things. This is what I suggest that the dashboards look like. And so we started there to be actually able to show that, hey, marketing is contributing to pipeline. And then digging into like, okay, how do we make that better? Because it's still not where it needs to be. So how do we make that better? Where do we turn the levers? How do we get more volume there? So I did have to start with like actually showing pipeline. But from there, I think part of it is, it depends on your leadership team too and what they care about. But part of it is to be able to point to competitors and say like, look, they're getting covered in these places. They're doing PR or they're doing brand activities. Don't you think this would be a good place to start? And so you just start testing too, and you're very clear from the beginning of what you're going to measure and how you're going to determine success. Because if you go into brand activities expecting a direct ROI and revenue payoff and to see that in your data, I think that's pretty unlikely.
It's such a frustrating issue for marketers because, the most sophisticated marketers know that in the industries that we deal with, it's a long sales cycle. They're going to do, the buying group is doing their own research, and they're doing that for 9 months before they'll talk to anybody. And they will talk to you when they're good and ready. And they start the process with a shortlist.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Many cases, they've already kind of decided who they want to go. And it's all about actually justifying their biases from the get-go. And that we can't do, you can't get on the list without brand awareness. However, you've generated that brand awareness, but you can't get on the list. If they haven't heard of you, you're not on the list. But it's so hard to convince many CEOs that you've got to invest in brand. Let's kind of stay in the sort of the softer stuff, which is, a lot of influence of health tech buyers is happening in places we can't track. That might be in private Slack communities. It might be conversations that are happening in private groups like Project 229. It might be, it's all the stuff that goes on LinkedIn that's happening in DMs, the peer conversations, all that stuff. How do you account for that stuff, if at all?
From a reporting standpoint, I don't really. I love this though, because I think it should be happening that way. And I think that's the number one reason to talk to your ICP and to listen to Gong calls. I love nothing more than to be able to talk to a customer. All the questions I mentioned at the beginning, like, who do you talk to learn about new solutions? Like, what sources do you trust? Like, are you reading Becker's every day? Or like, do you go to his talk? Like, where are you getting your industry news from? What shows do you attend? What do you like to do when you're at those shows? Like, what do you think when you see this? I think that's probably the most important place you can start, because it enables you to create content that is interesting and they care about. Because if you're not doing that, almost everything else doesn't matter. You kind of blend in with the rest of the noise that's out there. The other thing that we've done for that maybe is some level of tracking, we have this "How did you hear about us?" field on our demo form. And I know that's not novel, but we have some pretty specific prompting. They're like, if you asked ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera, what was the prompt that you used? And we have that on our form as a free text field. And it's not the easiest thing to report on, but it's really informative, because we've had heard people say like, oh, actually we came through the Athena marketplace, and like we might have a UTM on that, but if they didn't click directly from that, it's not going to come through in our tracking. So we get a lot of really interesting things about like how people are prompting AI, what they asked it, who they're talking to, what customer referred them that we wouldn't otherwise get. And then we're able to say like, okay, like we know anecdotally that maybe we should try more of this. And then you can kind of measure that and see if your pipeline is increasing or not.
That's really interesting. And how do you take action on what you're learning?
I think that goes back to killing the traditional campaign. And I just love being able to go from idea to execute. Like if you look at Luma's LinkedIn right now, we're doing a series on containment in voice AI. That was something that I learned a little bit more about last week. Like had a conversation with the team, like, hey, I don't think a lot of people know what this means. Like, should we break it down? And so it started with just like a couple simple organic posts, but now it's gotten interest. And so it's become a full series. We have a blog on it, I think going live today or next week. So just kind of continuing to iterate and see what's working on things like that and trying those things that maybe come through that form as channels and then being able to measure that.
Now, you brought this up earlier on, and it's become a mandatory, right? You can't do a podcast without mentioning AI. And obviously, it's particularly relevant here. How's AI changing the way that you guys are operating?
Yeah, I think for everybody, it's changing a ton of how we're operating. I think for us, especially, our product development is so much faster than it used to be. So marketing doesn't have the luxury of taking 8 weeks to put a campaign together for a launch. Like product is moving so fast that if you take that time, like they're already on to the next thing. So I think the speed is one thing. I don't love AI for content or image generation. I think most of what you see, it's fairly easy to tell that it's AI generated and it's not like it's boring and it's not good quality. But from an efficiency standpoint, it's huge. I think it allows us to, connect with the tools that we use on a daily basis. So like you think of HubSpot and Claude working together, or even on its own, it enables us to look at data in a much more efficient way that something manually would have taken a significant amount of time. You can give AI the data and you can ask specific questions. And of course, you have to validate that, but you can get insights a lot more quickly than before. And then you can action on those. And I think it is a good starting point for some brainstorming but in terms of the output itself.
I'm curious about the way that you're using AI and Claude together.
HubSpot and Claude together?
Oh, sorry, HubSpot.
Yeah, we're just starting to scratch the surface. So this is a new one for us. So we're not using it for content generation. We're using it for data analysis and insights more than anything.
I see. Got it. Yeah. I have to say, I started my AI journey like everybody else, 3 years ago now. And I was a massive Claude fan from content. As a company, about a year ago, we decided that we needed to consolidate what we're doing and take a much more strategic approach. Everybody was using it tactically.
Sure.
And we decided for reasons that made sense back at that time that we would use OpenAI as our platform.
Okay.
And that was great until February when the new models came out, and we've just flipped to Claude.
Yeah.
In fact, we're using, unfortunately, from a cost perspective, it sucks because we're actually using both because we built a lot of our stack on OpenAI. But
sure,
Claude, it's amazing what you can do with Claude. It is just extraordinary.
Really is.
Yeah. They fixed the PowerPoint problem. It's like now it's generating beautiful slides. It's just incredible. Anyway, I could go on forever about that. If a health tech CMO came to you tomorrow and said, I need to rebuild the way that our GTM model from scratch, where would you tell them to start?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to think about. I think product market fit is always number one for me. If you don't have that, the rest of your go-to-market motion doesn't really matter. From there, you'll notice a theme here. I would say talk to your ICP, like learn everything you can potentially learn about them. And then I would develop a content strategy from there so that you're talking about the things that they care about, that they're interested in. I think, there's the old saying that content is king, and I really don't think that that's ever changed. I think content, and that can look like a variety of different things. I don't necessarily mean like blogging. I mean, to me, content could be the content that you're presenting at a small group event. So, we do a lot of these like small customer events, but we're really thoughtful, intentional about like, What do they care about? What do they want to know? What do they want to know about Luma? What do they want to know about the industry? What is going to provide value to them if they attend one of these things? So I think the content is the most important thing above any of the channel. Everybody's like, what channels and campaigns should I run? I'm like, well, it doesn't matter unless you know what you need to say to your audience. And then probably building the right team. I think this is one thing that I pride myself on is hiring. I tend to not hire for some of your traditional marketing skill set. I like to look for curiosity. I like to look for ownership and accountability and just pride in your work in general. So in the interview process, if I can see those things, I'm more likely to hire, even if they've never used LinkedIn Campaign Manager in their life and have no idea how to create a retargeting audience. Those types of things are easy to teach, but those skills are not. So I would probably advise to build the right team with those qualities and then move fast and iterate would be probably the last thing.
You're very clear on it. I think this is going to be extremely helpful because I think everybody is on the journey from the traditional model to a more modern GTM approach that you've, I think, depicted very clearly. If you grew up with demand gen, if you had to write an obituary for the traditional model, what would you say?
Yeah, it would be pretty straightforward. It would be like, here lies demand gen. Everyone thought I was lead gen, but I wasn't. Because I think demand is still very well and alive, but it's just that people got wrapped up in the lead component. And so it became incredibly dysfunctional.
Yeah, perfectly said. Alex, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Likewise, Adam, I've enjoyed our chat today. Thank you.
Wow, what a great, rich couple of conversations. Two marketers who've done the real work in rebuilding how their teams connect to revenue. So here are 5 key takeaways that I hope you will take away with you. So number 1, the MQL isn't necessarily dead, but the way most people use it is. So both Alex and Paula have moved well past treating MQLs as a volume game. In fact, Alex doesn't actually measure MQLs at all. Alex's team starts at stage 1 in sales, which only counts once a meeting has actually taken place. That's a pretty tough standard. Paula describes staying in the funnel much longer than before and doing deeper discovery before any handoff to sales. The shared principle that they had is that marketing should be accountable for revenue, not just activity. Takeaway number 2, where your SDRs live changes everything. Paula was emphatic that the SDRs have to report into marketing, and that's the secret sauce because they're the ones doing real discovery at the top of the funnel. They're the ones who are often educating prospects on what it will take them to get a project through their organization. And Alex echoed this. In her case, the SDRs sit in a unified revenue team that's tightly aligned with both marketing and sales. So essentially sitting alongside marketing, not as part of the marketing team. But in both cases, the job isn't to hand off fast, it's to hand off right. Takeaway 3, the GTM team is one unit, not 3 departments. Paula's peanut butter and jelly model, sales, marketing, and customer success inseparable, is a useful mental model here. Marketing's role in that structure is to be the quarterback, holding strategy together across all the teams, staying in sync, being the common voice in the market. Alex runs a similar playbook, short iterative content cycles, fast idea to execution, with an ABM motion layered on top of enterprise accounts. In both cases, the silos are gone by design. Number 4, in healthcare, the buyer's peer network is still the most powerful channel you can't directly control. Paula made the point that, and I think it's easy to underestimate this, is that 80% of decisions in healthcare start with someone phoning a friend. The peer network, associations, regional communities like Project 229, long-standing relationships, is where vendor shortlists get built. That means your customers are the most effective salespeople you have, and building that asset through customer success, through quarterly business reviews, and by giving them speaker opportunities should be a strategic priority, not just a nice to have. 5, AI is on the org chart now. I loved Paula's framing here. Her team names their AI tools. ChatGPT is Chad, Claude is Claudette, and there's Bambi, a purpose-built tool for RFP responses that hunts competitive data and builds differentiated answers. Alex is using AI along HubSpot for data analysis and insight generation, moving away from the traditional 8-week campaign model towards something much faster, much more iterative, and much more responsive. In both cases, AI isn't a tool you dabble in, it's become core part of the GTM infrastructure. So that's it for today. Now, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone else who's still working through what modern demand gen actually looks like in health tech. Because a lot of people in this industry are on the journey, and they could really benefit from hearing how Paula and Alex are doing it. And if you're enjoying the show, a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple goes a hell of a long way to helping people find us. So with that, I'm Adam Chirinas, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Health Tech Marketing Show.